let's see, I was born in Portland, Oregon, at Emmanuel Hospital in 1973. I grew up in Northeast Portland, so went through my entire childhood through Portland Public Schools. It's been a big part of my life. I would say I was a fairly active but pretty shy kid, and that definitely played into part of why I became a theater person eventually, but yeah, I did kind of the typical things as a kid. I initially got into acting first. So my first introduction into theater was actually in middle school. I signed up for an acting class. They offered it there as a seventh grader or eighth grader. You could take theater. But then when I got into high school, I finally got into my first acting class, and I really enjoyed it from the start. Like, it was one of those monumental, life-changing things where I had really discovered something that I guess needed. I didn't actually do any tech theater at all when I was in high school. I was aware that tech things were happening. Like, I knew that people were doing lights, and I knew that people were building the set, because I would come into rehearsal and all of a sudden there would just be stuff, and I was like, okay, how'd this get here? So when I got done with high school, I joined the military. I was in the Army, partly because I wanted to pay for school. That was a big reason why I did it. I didn't financially have the money to pay for it. I still remember sitting in class. I was like sitting in the Spanish class, and I got my financial aid report, which was basically they're not giving me any money. They were like, your school's paid for, but my parents were kind of in this tax bracket where, sorry, you get nothing. And when I came back, I had gone through a lot of life experiences and had decided I want to be an English teacher. Like, by that time, I did some traveling, I worked a bit, and I decided at that point I wanted to be an English teacher, and so I started taking English classes, and I lasted about one semester of taking English classes before I realized I really don't want to be an English teacher or an English major, because it kind of ruined reading for me. I like reading, but if you've never taken college level English classes, it is a tremendous amount of reading. Like, it's so much reading that any joy is just sucked out of you because you're reading so many novels. And at the same time that I was doing that, my roommate that I just got randomly paired with in college, my dorm roommate, was involved in building the sets for the current production. And he invited me. He's like, you did theater. I know you're an English major now, but in conversation, he's like, you should come down and just, we're meet on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. Do you want to come and help us build? It kind of brought me back into theater in a new way. And so then when I came back, after doing that one semester, I went back into theater, but this time sort of as a stagecraft person now. Like, I had a background in performing, but then I became heavily interested in set construction, stagecraft. And so I just started that to be my focus. And I really kind of keyed in on two things: lighting and set design. Anyway, so I had all this free time because I was just taking one class to finish, which was this directing class, which was in the morning. It was a very involved class, so it was only 2 days a week, but it was basically like half of my day. But then, and I was involved in directing a play. I had actors, I had rehearsal schedules, but I also had all this free time. And I couldn't really get a job because it was this inconvenient time between where people wanted you to work. So I then was asked by Matt, who was my roommate, he's like, you got all this free time, you should just come into this place that I'm working at. I think you'd like it. And so he put together a lot of activities, and then I started participating, helping, kind of being a chaperone. And Matt said, well, we're going to be doing a summer school thing. Would you be interested in teaching some classes? Like, you don't have to have a degree. There's a teacher of record. You would be what's called a guest artist. You would come in, you would teach the concepts around acting and or stagecraft, whatever you want to do. And so I made an arrangement to teach two classes. I taught an acting class and I taught a stagecraft class for these groups of high school students that were in this at-risk program. And I loved it. Like, it was, And at the same time, I was teaching this class during the day, and I was doing this Shakespeare acting at night, and the Shakespeare acting was really boring because I would basically just had this entrance and exit. I wasn't really doing much. So the meaningful side of what was challenging me wasn't acting at that point. It was these kids that I saw a direct result of my helping, me doing that. I saw them changing. I saw them becoming different people. And it just inspired me. That was when it started to shift for me, where I started to consider maybe there's something to this teaching thing that is going to be more my speed than acting. So that's all to say that I finished all those experiences, right? I did my summer, taught those classes, had a meaningful experience. That next fall, I decided I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to go to LA. I have some friends down there. It was the easiest move. My friend Kate, who I also went to high school with and was teaching, was a teacher, a theater teacher actually, invited me, said, you have a place to stay. You can come down. You've wanted to pursue this acting thing. And I had conversations with her about the possibility of becoming a teacher. So I had a place to stay. I went down to LA. I was living down there temporarily, starting the process of trying to get myself established there. And I was living with my friend Kate. And she was a theater teacher at that point and was kind of telling me, I went, through this process that she had gone to PSU and that she really liked it. And so part of our conversations were, oh, that sounds really great, but it wasn't something I was considering. It was just something that she had told me about. And at that same exact kind of month, a family member of mine had gotten into a difficult situation. Specifically, so kind of in an emergency situation, I had to leave. Like, my idea of establishing myself in LA just wasn't going to happen because I needed to come back and help my family. So I then moved back to Portland kind of very quickly. And so when I got back, I was just kind of going through this transition of like, okay, what I'm here to help my family. I was doing that. That was taking up all my time. But that kind of, through the fall, kind of leveled out. And then I was in this position where I had to decide, well, what am I doing now? Do I go back down to LA and try to restart this acting thing? But instead, I actually because I'd had these conversations with Kate, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go down to PSU and I'm just going to find out, like, how hard would it be for me to apply, and what do I need to do? What would I need? Do I qualify for a teaching degree and or a program? So I just went down there. I met with a couple people and signed up, kind of not expecting to get in, honestly. Like, I didn't really know what would happen. I didn't really know if I was going to get accepted into this program. And then got established back in Portland, decided, I was going to stay here. I got involved working at another program, another school called Morrison Breakthrough. So I ended up working as a sub, essentially. What I would do is I would come in and I would work with kids when somebody was sick. And so I got more and more involved. And at the same time, I had applied, and then all of a sudden, I got into the program, and it started that summer, and then that's really kind of how I found my way into teaching from, like I said, the semi-professional world where I was working and trying to establish myself, but at the same time I was doing that, I started doing this teaching thing, and then the teaching thing just became way more important to me. So I got finished. When I was signing up, they had to find a school for me, and so I literally just went to the first school that was closest to PSU, which was Lincoln High School. I was like, well, I'm just going to start going to the high schools. And I went to Lincoln and I met with the teacher, and I didn't really have any connection with this person, but I basically just said, hey, would you be willing to take me on as a student teacher? PSU hasn't found anybody. Would you do that? And the person's name is Jim Perenboom. He agreed to take me on as a student teacher, but I got to know a lot of the high schools. And one of the things that I discovered is that I found out through the ways of what was going on that the theater teacher at Jefferson High School was going to retire, that they were retiring. When they announced the job, I was on there on day one. I had everything ready. I brought it personally to the principal at Jefferson at the time. So I got hired. I became a part-time teacher at Jefferson. I worked there for 5 years, half-time. And when I was there, I would work half-time as a theater teacher. I taught 3 classes. And then the other half of the time, I was a sub. But what ended up happening is the job at Jefferson ended up getting switched around. So what happened was they were transitioning into it being this middle college, and they didn't want any, well, they didn't need theater. Theater wasn't part of that equation. So they basically said, we're cutting the theater program, because even though I had found some success and I had gone from, I had directed plays there every year and thought I was kind of building this program, they just made the decision to cut it. At that same time, that same kind of school year when I was losing, I knew that I was losing my job at the end of the year. It's like, this is my last year at Jefferson. My mom was working here at Franklin at the time. There was a theater teacher here that had injured themselves. They had gotten injured in some fashion. I think they had hurt their neck. And because of that, they couldn't do the musical that school year. They were all geared up, ready to do the musical, but they couldn't do it. So I don't know if she'd mentioned it. She had mentioned it to the principal, this person named Shay James. And then she just cold called me one day and just called me and said, hey, look, I'm in this really difficult situation. I can't find anybody to direct. Your mom says that you are a theater teacher. Because part of the hurdle of being able to work with high schoolers is you have to have gone through a background check. So finding somebody last minute is really not that easy. You have to go through a pretty extensive background. Which they wouldn't have been able to do in time. So it was kind of a, either I'm going to do it or nobody's going to do it kind of type thing. So I came back the next day and said, yeah, I'd be willing to take it on, even though I knew I had no idea what I was doing. But I had been in a lot of musicals, and I knew that I had a lot of friends that I could call to help me. So I said yes, and then I took on the job, and it was an incredible experience. It was really, really fun. Especially because at the time there was this real need and desperation from the students here where they just really wanted anybody to help them do this musical. They just wanted a physical body to be in the room. Yeah, that's how I ended up here, just by way of they needed somebody to direct the musical, and I said yes.
I think that's everything.
Sweet.